You believe trading is freedom, a way out, a fast track to wealth, independence, and power. But what if it isn't? What if trading is a mental poison, one that corrupts your emotions, distorts your perception, and leaves you emptier with every tick of the chart? Over 150 years ago, a philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer warned us about the very force that drives every trader, the will. He didn't speak about markets or candlestick patterns, but his words describe modern traders better than any trading coach ever could. Schopenhauer believed that all life is driven by an irrational force, what he called the will. This will isn't logical. It doesn't aim at peace. It craves. It desires. And once it gets what it wants again. In trading, the will takes over the moment you open a position. You want profit. You want it fast. And the more you want, the more power this will has over you. The trade becomes more than a number. It becomes an extension of your identity. If you win, you feel powerful. If you lose, you feel worthless. The will doesn't stop. Even after a big win, you're already looking for the next one. You're not satisfied. You're addicted. Schopenhauer said, "Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom." In trading, that pendulum is brutal. You enter a trade. You're anxious. That's pain. You wait. You're restless. That's boredom. You win. You feel a rush, but it fades fast. You lose. You feel shame, frustration, despair. Every candle is an emotional spike, a hit of dopamine, or a stab of regret. And still, you come back. Because the will keeps whispering, maybe next time. You thought trading would give you freedom. But freedom isn't found in dependency. And if your emotions rise and fall with the market, you're not free. You're chained. You left your job to trade. But now the market is your boss. Worse, it's unpredictable, cold, and unforgiving. Schopenhauer saw this illusion clearly. We pursue desires, thinking they'll liberate us. But every desire is a chain, and every fulfillment leads to a new craving. In trading, there's no final victory, only the next entry, the next exit, the next high. You're not chasing profit, you're chasing a feeling, and it's killing your peace. Modern neuroscience explains what Schopenhauer intuited over a century ago. Trading is not just a financial act, it's a neurological one. Every trade, especially a successful one, releases dopamine in the brain, the same neurotransmitter that reinforces habits and addictions. The brain begins to associate trading with reward, turning each chart check, each price movement, into a potential hit. But like any addictive pattern, the reward quickly diminishes. You need more trades, bigger risks, higher highs. This craving doesn't end with profit. In fact, it deepens with it. After a win, the trader feels invincible. The mind says, let's do it again. But when the next trade turns red, the crash is sharp and personal. The ego is bruised. The will, however, is unshaken. It pushes you to trade again, not to make money, but to reclaim a sense of control that was never really there. The trader begins to spiral, refreshing the charts at midnight, watching candles more than living real life. Relationships suffer, sleep suffers, health suffers. The world narrows into a screen and a set of numbers. Schopenhauer would call this enslavement to illusion. The illusion that satisfaction lies just one trade away. But that moment never arrives. The will keeps feeding the trader a false promise that happiness will come with the next win. But it doesn't. It can't. Because the will doesn't want peace. It wants wanting. And in trading, it finds the perfect arena to thrive, where numbers move endlessly and the craving never dies. Every trader begins with a dream: freedom, self-reliance, control over their own time. But Schopenhauer would call this dream a dangerous illusion. The reality is much darker. In chasing profit, the trader becomes bound to the most chaotic master imaginable, the market. It demands attention at all hours. It punishes confidence. It rewards recklessness just often enough to keep the hope alive. And above all, it never guarantees anything. Yet the trader persists, not out of rational strategy, but because of a belief that control is possible. But control, Schopenhauer reminds us, is another lie of the will. We do not control what we desire. Our desires control us. And in the market, those desires are amplified. One moment you are calm. The next, your heart races over a single candle's movement. You convince yourself you're making choices, but in truth, you're reacting. Reacting to greed, to fear, to hope. The will is in charge, and it's pulling the strings behind every click, every chart, every decision. This illusion of control is what makes trading especially poisonous. It convinces you that you're the master, when you're really the slave. You think you're making rational trades, but you're trying to fill an emotional void with financial outcomes. Every win is a temporary patch. Every loss is a deeper wound. The market doesn't just take your money, it takes your mind, bit by bit. And the more you chase mastery over it, the more it masters you. As the trader sinks deeper into the market's grip, a dangerous cycle takes hold, one that mirrors the addictive patterns Schopenhauer warned against. At first, it's just about the money, but soon, it's not. It becomes about identity, about being a trader. You start to define yourself by your ability to beat the market. Your self-worth becomes attached to your trades. A green day means you're a genius. A red day means you're a failure. Slowly, without realizing it, you stop being a person who trades and become a person who only lives to trade. This erosion of self is the most subtle and painful part of the poison. Schopenhauer understood that the will corrupts the mind by convincing it that fulfillment is just around the corner. But there is no arrival point. The more you feed the will, the more it grows. And in trading, there is always another trade, another setup, another potential high. The trader loses touch with anything outside the market. Relationships become strained. Passions fade. Even rest feels like wasted time if it's not spent watching charts. The market becomes life. Neuroscience backs up this descent. The constant stimulation of profit and loss hijacks the brain's reward systems. Dopamine is no longer released by meaningful achievements or human connection, but by numbers on a screen. The trader becomes like a gambler in a casino, endlessly pulling a lever, chasing the next win, blind to the cost. And Schopenhauer would say this suffering is not accidental. It is built into the very nature of desire. The more intensely we chase satisfaction, the more we are tormented by its absence. There is no bottom in this addiction. Only burnout. Only despair. And even in that despair, the will whispers, "Try again tomorrow." If Arthur Schopenhauer were alive today, walking past trading floors filled with blinking monitors, rapid mouse clicks, and traders glued to their screens, he would likely remain unmoved. He would not be captivated by the complexity of candlestick patterns or the vast sea of economic data flashing across terminals. He would not marvel at the speed of high-frequency algorithms or the thrill of minute-by-minute speculation. Instead, he would observe quietly, his deep-set eyes seeing something most would miss. The same ancient drama playing out in a modern form. A performance of the human will, endlessly striving, endlessly dissatisfied. For Schopenhauer, the human experience was defined by an irrational, unconscious force he called the will. This will is not simply desire or ambition. It is a deeper metaphysical force, an energy that drives all life to want, to seek, to struggle, and to suffer. It is blind, relentless, and insatiable. And in the world of trading, Schopenhauer would see one of its most polished manifestations. Traders, sitting before their screens, chasing green candles, fearing red ones, gripped by adrenaline and anticipation, are not just making financial decisions. They are expressing the will in its purest form, restless, volatile, and compulsive. He would see the stock market not as a neutral system for price discovery, but as a vast illusion machine, a place that entices individuals with the promise of freedom while slowly ensnaring them in a deeper bondage. The trader, like the gambler, is not just trying to win, he is trying to escape something within. Beneath every click of the mouse lies a question unspoken. Am I enough? Will this trade fill the emptiness? Will this win finally silence the fear, the doubt, the boredom? And again, Schopenhauer would smile, not in mockery, but in recognition. He knew this pattern well. He saw it in the artist, the lover, the addict, the philosopher, all chasing something they cannot quite name, never realizing it is not the object that is the problem, but the endless reaching itself. Yet Schopenhauer was not a nihilist. He did not tell us to despair. He pointed toward a way out. And the way, paradoxically, was not through gaining more control, more money, or more mastery, but through renunciation. Not escape from life, but escape from the illusions of the will. He believed that true freedom begins the moment we stop identifying with our desires, when we begin to observe them, not as commands to obey, but as impulses to understand. Applied to the world of trading, Schopenhauer's philosophy becomes nothing short of revolutionary, not because it tells you to stop, but because it asks you to look deeper. It challenges the very foundation on which modern trading psychology is built. It does not demonize the act of trading itself, nor does it shame ambition or discourage skill development. Instead, it demands brutal honesty. It asks a question that most traders never pause to ask themselves: what is truly driving me? It forces you to look beyond the surface-level metrics, profit and loss, win rate, technical indicators, and confront what lies underneath, the emotional, psychological, and even spiritual motives that animate every click, every risk, every sleepless night. Why do you trade? Really, why? Is it the thrill of the win, or the fear of irrelevance? Is it a genuine pursuit of financial freedom, or a disguised flight from emotional discomfort? Are you seeking wealth as a means of security, or are you secretly hoping that one perfect trade will redeem your sense of worth? These questions don't fit neatly into a trading journal or a candlestick chart, but they are far more important. Because until you answer them honestly, you are not trading with awareness. You are trading in reaction. Not as a sovereign actor, but as a puppet of something deeper: the will. The modern trader prides themselves on being rational. They speak fluently in the language of logic, probabilities, entries, exits, R multiples, drawdowns. But beneath this polished exterior flows a hidden river of emotion. It is a current shaped by greed, by fear, by the desperate need to prove something to oneself or others. It is the emotional volatility behind the market's numerical volatility. Schopenhauer would argue that no matter how advanced your trading system is, if you have not confronted this internal chaos, you remain its prisoner. The market merely becomes a mirror that reflects the turbulence within. And so, he would not suggest more technical study or better discipline. He would suggest something far more radical: spiritual discipline, a turning inward, a form of introspection that strips away the lies we tell ourselves. He would urge you to become a witness to your own mind, to notice how your self-worth swells with a green candle and shrinks with a red one, how one trade can affect your mood, your relationships, your sense of identity, how easily obsession creeps in, how the charts become the first thing you see in the morning and the last thing you check at night. This level of awareness is not easy. It requires courage. Because to truly observe yourself without judgment is to confront the truth that you may not be trading for the reasons you think. You may not be investing money. You may be investing hope. You may be building positions, but really, you're building fantasies. The moment you see this clearly is the moment you gain power, not over the market, but over yourself. From this awareness, Schopenhauer's concept of detachment begins to unfold, not as cold indifference, but as profound freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of outcomes. You begin to trade with clarity, not compulsion. A winning trade no longer inflates your ego. A losing trade no longer crushes your soul. Your sense of worth begins to unhook itself from your performance. Slowly, your identity detaches from the scoreboard and returns to something more stable. Your values, your discipline, your self-understanding. In that space, something quietly extraordinary begins to happen. You become a better trader, not because you discovered a new setup, but because you discovered silence. You don't overtrade, not because you're forcing restraint, but because the urge itself has weakened. You stop revenge trading, not because you memorize the rule, don't trade angry, but because you've come to see anger as a false god. Your edge becomes multidimensional, not just technical, but emotional, mental, philosophical. The kind of edge that cannot be measured on a backtest. And then, almost unnoticed, you begin to reclaim something even more valuable than consistency, your humanity. You remember how to be still, how to take a walk without checking the Tao, how to enjoy a meal without thinking about futures. You begin to rediscover the texture of time, not as something to beat or exploit, but as something to experience. Life no longer feels like a series of intermissions between trading sessions. It becomes whole again. These aren't small changes. They are sacred. They are the signs that the will is loosening its grip, that you are no longer being driven by the engine of craving. Schopenhauer would call this the beginning of wisdom, the first light of inner peace. And peace, in his philosophy, was never about escaping pain entirely, but about rising above the illusions that multiply it. Pain is real. But suffering, he said, is often the result of clinging to success, to identity, to illusion. This is why Schopenhauer admired those who lived simply. The artist who creates without seeking applause, the ascetic who finds joy in less, the philosopher who prefers depth over recognition. These were not saints, but rebels, people who said no to the will and its endless demands. And the trader can become one of them, not by renouncing trading, but by renouncing the egoic need to be validated through it. Because here is the truth, as Schopenhauer would see it. You cannot outtrade the will. You cannot earn enough, win enough, or master enough to finally arrive at rest, because the will always move the finish line. Every green day creates the desire for another. Every win breeds the fear of loss. Every milestone reached becomes invisible the moment it's passed. It is a treadmill that looks like progress, but leads nowhere. So the real revolution is not outside, but within. You do not need to walk away from trading, but you must walk away from the illusion that trading will fix what is broken inside you, that the market will make you whole, that your value is tied to your performance. These are lies of the will, and the moment you see through them is the moment you step outside the prison they built. So pause, truly pause, not out of strategy, but out of self-respect. Ask yourself the question most traders never ask. Am I trading from freedom, or because I am trying to escape something? If it is the latter, no amount of profit will be enough. But if it is the former, if you trade from clarity, from choice, from presence, then even your losses will become teachers. Even your failures will be free of shame. There is a deeper profit than money. It is the ability to be still in a moving world, to choose detachment over obsession, to prefer wisdom over validation. When you reach that point, something sacred returns to you. Your time, your inner space, your selfhood. The market loses its grip, and you gain something the will can never offer: peace. That is the real antidote Schopenhauer offers, not just for traders, but for anyone living in a world that constantly says more. His message is not to withdraw from life, but to wake up within it, to see through the mirage, to realize that you are already whole, that the true battle is not for profits, but for perspective.